After weeks of digging this place out, it's finally time to start building. Some of the blocks I'm going to be using requires black dye, which is why in the last episode I spent way too much time building the squid farm, which should give me plenty. But enough about that, let's start building. If you intentionally clicked on this video, I'm sure you already know that the main thing I want to get done today is some of the terraforming, but before I do that I just want to get started on this main building so I don't just have a big red box sitting here forever. I'm not going to build too much of it, but I think I could at least get the bottom part done. But anyway, this is the general design for the foundation of one of these 4 outer towers. So it's obviously pretty simple, but the reason for that is the rest of the tower is going to have a lot of detail in it, so it's going to be nice to have a part that doesn't. But having just the stone there might be a little bit too simple, so let's add in a few more block variations. Yeah, that's a lot better. So that's the side of the foundation done, but I should probably give it a top so that it can actually, hold up a building. And all I need for that is a little bit of smooth stone, and some regular stone. These 2 blocks take up a bit of the space, but inside this middle area is actually where the tower floor is going to be, so I'm going to make it look a little bit nicer using dark oak, spruce, and oak wood. Something like that should do. It's a really simple design, but I think it looks pretty good. Then from here all that's left is adding in some railings. And there's the first one complete. Oh, so this geode's definitely going to get in the way once I start building, so I might as well remove that now. Alright, I've gone ahead and copied that over 3 times, so now all that's left is the middle. Similar to what I did over here, I'm once again going to be building these spruce wood arches. However, these ones are a little bit shorter so that the whole thing's not just completely flat, which I imagine would look pretty terrible. Before I started this episode, I once again ran out of spruce wood for like the 347th time this series, and as you can see, I'm going to need quite a lot of it. So I feel like by the time I'm done on this world, there's going to be no taiga biomes left. Even just for this, I had to destroy half of a forest. But enough about deforestation, let's add in all the stone. Before this project, I don't think I've ever actually enchanted a pair of shears before, and I've got to say, these are really nice. Like, the sheer amount of time these are saving is crazy. Before I add a floor up here, I'm just going to build a staircase going up to it, so that there's actually a way to, enter the building. And all you need for that is a few stairs, which I'm sure was pretty obvious. Instead of just having one long staircase, which I think would look pretty boring, I decided to just split it up 2 ways here, and then cover the front with some more of these blocks. But it still feels a little bit weird just stepping right down onto the stone, so I'm just going to build another little platform out here. Something like that should do. Actually, it might be just a little bit too much oak wood, so I'll just spruce that up a bit. I'll eventually be filling this place with a bunch of different piles of barrels and whatnot, but I didn't really feel like doing that, so for now I'll just place in some lanterns. Moving on to the floor, despite the fact that I'm literally building it right now, I still have no idea what I want to do in the middle. So for now, I'm basically just making a bigger version of the 4 outer floors, and since this one is much larger, it also allows for a lot more detail, so as you can see, I kinda just kept adding onto it until I found something that at least looks somewhat decent. And while I finished that up, I also just added in the other 3 staircases. I feel like I say this after everything I do, but that was a lot more work than I expected it to be. But anyway, now the base of my base is basically finished, and it actually looks pretty good. Oh, so these vines are getting a little bit out of control, so I think it's finally time I give them a trim, which should actually be fairly satisfying. There we go, now it's a lot more open. Just like I mentioned last episode, I'm going to be filling up this whole floor with water, which is also why these platforms kinda look like docks. And since it would help me avoid doing the terraforming for even longer, why don't I just do that now? And the best way to do it is to use a little bit of ice, which is really quick and easy to get, except for when the closest biome to get it is thousands of blocks away. But anyway, let's start placing it down. I don't like doing this because it's kind of annoying, but stuff like that takes a really long time, so if you wouldn't mind just pressing a few of those buttons underneath the video, that'd be pretty cool. Anyway, the base is completely flooded now, and I think it looks way better than it did before. Another reason I wanted to put in all the water now is there's at least 2 or 3 slime chunks down here, and between this project and the last few, slime are slowly becoming my least favorite mob in the game. Well, besides this one, of course. So hopefully all this will prevent them from spawning down here. Okay, I give up. With all the water in place, I've done just about everything I can think of to avoid doing the terraforming, so I guess it's finally time I start that. I have quite a lot of blocks to mine, so I'm definitely going to want haste, but where the beacons are right now, the effects don't actually reach the sides. So to fix that, I'm just going to put a beacon under each of these outer platforms, which should also look pretty cool. There, now no matter where I go, I should have haste. Or at least I would if I actually remembered to turn them on. But even with haste, I still really don't feel like mining, so let's just place down a few blocks and done. So as you can see, I have this wall split up into a bunch of these different sized platforms. And I won't be starting this today, but eventually each of these platforms will be covered in a bunch of different buildings and farms and whatnot to create almost like an underground city. While I was doing this, I came across quite a few caves, but instead of just covering them up, I decided to incorporate them, which I think makes the whole thing feel a lot more natural. Another example is this cave entrance down here. It may not look like much now, but I think it has potential to be turned into some kind of like treasure cave or something, so let me know if that's something you'd be interested in seeing. The problem with living underground like this is not only do you have to deal with an infinite number of slimes, but it also really throws off your sense of scale. So I tried to include a bunch of these smaller, normalish looking caves, so that way whenever you step out of them, you're reminded just how big this project really is. Also, I've noticed this a few times while I was terraforming, but whenever it rains like it is now, you get this really thick fog, which I think looks pretty cool down here. But what I think looks even better is right after the rain stops, all the fog lifts, which almost looks like it's revealing the base. Anyway, this wall may be shaped completely, but it still doesn't look that great because it's made entirely out of dirt and stone, so the next thing I want to do is replace every single one of these blocks with some nicer looking ones, which I'm sure will be just as much fun as that sounds. And since 1.19's out now, I want to make use of some of the new blocks, so let's go find a mangrove forest. And here we are. I've seen a few videos of people exploring this biome throughout the snapshots, but I've gotta say, in person it looks so much better. And having all these roots underneath the trees easily makes it one of my favorite biomes to walk through. At least for the first couple of times anyway. But the thing I've been looking forward to the most about this biome is the fireflies, so hopefully I see some of those soon. Oh, here they are. They're a little bit bigger than I thought they'd be, but at least they added them. Even with the oversized fireflies, this is still one of my new favorite biomes, and at least they were permitted enough to add in all the frogs, which are also really cool. But if you also really like this biome, you might want to look away for the next 30 seconds, because I need some blocks. All that's left now is this last little bit of mud, so I thought we could just finish it off with a bang. Which would work a lot better if I actually put flame on this bow. But I guess that's a second reason why there's no fire flying. And with that done, the whole mangrove forest is now destroyed. As long as you only look in this direction. These forests are easily one of the most dense biomes in the game, which means taking down even a part of them takes a really long time. But in return, you get a ton of blocks, which should be more than enough for texturing all the terraforming. But before I head back home and do that, there's just a few more things I need to grab quickly, like glowberries and dripstone. So that little trip took care of all the main blocks I need, but there was also just a few more I quickly grabbed off camera, as they were either really annoying to mine or just required a lot of smelting. But anyway, I now have over 100 choker boxes full of materials, so let's start the texturing. At this point, I'm sure you've guessed that I'm going to be creating some kind of gradient, so starting at the bottom, the darkest block I'm going to be using is mud. I'm also just mixing in some smooth basalt so that it looks a little bit less plain. And speaking of plain, let's see if these guys know how to fly. Aw, that's too bad. The next block in the gradient is muddy mangrove roots, which creates a perfect transition between mud and the next couple of blocks, which are all different shades of brown. But that's pretty much it for the bottom of the gradient. Now on to the middle, there's nothing really too special going on. I basically just used a mixture of all the three types of dirt, as well as a little bit of dripstone block. But I feel like the transition from mud to dirt still looks a little bit weird, so I'm just going to use a little bit of mangrove wood to try to fix that. Yeah, that looks a lot better. But before we do the top, there's actually one block I forgot to get for the middle. And that block is packed mud. And in order to craft this, you need both mud and wheat, which unless I lost in one of my 4 shulker monsters, I don't actually have any of. So I guess it's time for some farming. Most of the blocks I've used so far have been brown, so in order to break that up a bit, I'm going to be using some gray ones up here. And the blocks I chose for that are cracked stone bricks, cobblestone, mossy cobblestone, and this last block was pretty tough to choose, but I ended up going with this one. So this is what the finished gradient looks like. I know it makes use of quite a lot of different blocks, which is usually not the best idea for stuff like this, but I feel like on a large scale it actually looks pretty good. A few minutes ago for you, when I first terraformed this wall, I just used dirt to mark out all the floors, which obviously looks pretty ugly, so I'm going to be replacing all this with grass. So I thought it'd be cool if we had some of that green kind of spill over onto the wall underneath it. And in order to create that effect, I'm going to be using a mixture of moss and mangrove leaves. That looks okay, but I feel like because we're underneath the jungle, the color of the leaves just don't look quite right. And that'll be the same for pretty much every type of leaf, but there is one type that's the same in every biome. And that's the azalea leaves, but the problem with getting a lot of these ones is that there's no azalea forest I can just go mine down quick. So I guess I'm just gonna have to make my own. Alright, I've now replaced all the mangrove leaves, and these ones being pretty much the exact same color as the moss definitely look a lot better. So now this little part in the middle is finished, but there's obviously still quite a bit left to do, so I think you know what that means. And just like that, the first wall is completely retextured. So basically what I did is I tried to use as many green and brown blocks as possible to create this really earthy, lush landscape in attempts to turn something that's usually grey and boring into something much more alive. And I think that worked out pretty well, because especially if I turn down my render distance by a few chunks, it doesn't even feel like I'm underground. Oh, so I feel like if you can watch the sunrise from inside your base, that's a pretty good indicator that your base is big. There's obviously a few things that need some improvement, like this lighting situation for example, but overall I'm really happy with how it turned out. And of course, if you have any suggestions to make it look better, just let me know with a comment. Between starting the main building and doing some of the terraforming, we've made quite a lot of progress this video. So that's gonna be it for me today. Thanks for watching and see you all in the next episode.